So I'm throwing up a tweet on the screen right now, and it is from a pro-abortion activist. He appears to, be an advocate for abortion policies. He appears to work in that field, and he wrote, "It is literally impossible to top our topper. Hashtag pro-abortion. Hashtag abortions. Hashtag Christmas." And basically, the picture is of a Christmas tree, and it is decorated on the top instead of a star. It is some tools that they would use during an abortion procedure. It's disgusting. It's despicable. It's gross. It's heinous. I can think of many other adjectives that I won't go over, but it's just really the sort of thing that I think makes people who value the sanctity of life, people who value just human life in general, very angry, right? So I have two questions for y'all, and the first one is, I guess, Democrats back in the 90s and before that would talk about how they needed access to abortion and it was going to be safe, legal, and rare. What happened to that? And do tweets like this one, which are basically the exact opposite of safe, legal, and rare, this is shout your abortion, do tweets like this, kind of reveal the true leftist intentions when it comes to abortion on demand?
I mean, as to your first question, sorry to cut you off, Brian. This one, first of all, very basely, it makes me egregiously angry. But I think more important than anything, to answer your question about, where did that slogan go? It was just a slogan. Safe, legal, and rare was a Trojan horse when it comes to the issue of abortion. It meant nothing to these folks. I really deeply do not believe that at any point, the real genuine line in the Democratic Party was that, this is, a procedure that we don't support, but, we need to make sure that it's available to women so that there are not these back alley abortions. I mean, this, unfortunately, this very disgusting and vulgar support for just the institution of abortion, for groups like Planned Parenthood that we've seen in the last couple of years, it's an outgrowth, and it's, I guess, them showing their hand in the way that they want to handle this issue. It has always been, ever since Elizabeth Warren said it's women's reproductive rights. That's a slogan that should have gone away after she said it in the debate with Scott Brown. It should have disappeared. But that's always where this was going. It's going to start with the least permissive rhetoric possible while forwarding the agenda. And then, as Democrats often do, they work in the actual agenda, which is that they're going to be as permissive as possible with things that are absolutely abhorrent.
Yeah, and it's worth noting, I think, that this guy who posted this Twitter user, he says in a follow-up tweet, refuses to apologize, although
doubles down.
His Twitter is now private. But he said, "Some of us celebrate the right to self-determination. Y'all can stay mad about it." What?
So yeah, I'm gonna approach this from a slightly different angle. Like, obviously, what you guys have described, the actual act of abortion, like that is its own,
Evil.
yeah. But I think the part that for me is really disheartening. The part that really gets me down is this, people's personal lives. Like, it's one thing. We can vehemently disagree with someone if they are, pro-choice, pro-abortion, what have you.
Sure.
But for them to then, flaunt it in this manner, like when you see those videos of, a woman, woohoo, I got an abortion. Like, when you see stuff like that, it's really, at the end of the day, abortion is it should be such a private, intimate thing that... And yet you have these people just flaunting it like, they just passed their SATs or something. Like, that correlation to me is almost as disturbing as the act itself.
Yeah, I don't think people have shame. They're not,
Yeah, the lack of shame in modern society, the lack of, privacy, I guess. Like, it's just seeing those walls not just get torn down, but stay down. And it's only getting worse. Like you said, the slogan in the 90s, as empty of a platitude as it might have been, it was still sort of like this kind of private, like, we don't want to talk about it too much thing, and now it's just, I'm going to put it on top of my Christmas tree. Like,
but
come on.
And I know that the people are going to always go back to, slippery slope is a fallacy. Like, logically speaking, yes, you can't determine future probability with past probability, but the fact of the matter is that every major culture war issue that the conservatives have fought in the last 3-4 decades, we have seen the Democrats take an inch and make it a mile and then make it 10 miles. We're not talking about, and I think abortion is abhorrent, period, done, at all, in general. But we're not talking about, a first trimester abortion here where, certain establishment political figures, even on the right, are willing to kind of make leeway in terms of what should be legal, whether they agree morally or not.
Or the rape and incest exceptions.
Yes, things like that. This is the tools on top of that tree are, for lack of a better word, those are pliers that are used for a D&E second and third trimester abortion when the baby, is very clearly resembling a baby outside of the womb. They are, if you've seen the video, I forget who put it together, but a famous former abortionist put this video together of, at that point, you are ripping the limbs from the child and you are crushing the skull with those pliers. And you are then, removing the parts, piecing it together on a table to make sure that all of the parts are outside of the womb, and then you are suctioning out everything else. That is... It's the most inhumane thing that you can possibly bear to think about, and there is absolutely no shame, like you were saying, Joe. I think, unfortunately, I don't think that there's good in shaming people for being who they are when it comes to, do you like sports or do you like playing cards? That's an issue where we shouldn't be shaming our friends.
Depends on the sports team.
Fair point. If you're not a Patriots fan, maybe a little bit of shame,
right.
But I hate this mentality of there should be no shame in the culture whatsoever. It's like, listen, we shouldn't pile on and make people feel awful. Particularly, as Christians, we should be trying to love on people. But there should be an element of shame in terrible things being done, because that's how you see the light. That's how you recognize that what you've done is wrong. Mm-hmm. When there is no shame, there is never a moral recognition made. You just proceed.
I think you're right. That actually takes me to the next question I have, which is a little bit tougher. When I saw this photo, when I saw this tweet, I got mad, I got angry, and I felt a little bit of hatred toward the type of people who think that it's okay to do that. What is the correct, the loving Christian response to people like this? Not just anger and being mad at them. How do we win them over?
I think there are a couple prongs to this, because anyone who's just saying that essentially you need to ram your response down their throats and make them believe as you believe, those folks are wrong. Mm-hmm. The folks who are just saying we need to, we need to ban abortion from the United States and move on. No. We can talk about those policy implications, but there is a wide berth of things that need to be done. Education, hearts and minds need to be changed. You need to educate people on what this procedure is. You need to say, listen, I am someone who is an equal opportunity offender when it comes to comedy. There are things that are unacceptable in, the genuine human landscape. This isn't a joke. This is an unacceptable, to put this on top of a Christmas tree. This is clearly not a joke. This person was saying that this is awesome. This is fantastic. They doubled down. We need to educate and make people aware of what this procedure is. We need to love on people who have been victimized. And that's, yes, we talk about the baby as the victim in this situation, and unquestionably they are the first and foremost victim. A life was killed. Right. A life was ended. A heartbeat was terminated in most of these cases. We need to talk about the victims who are women. We need to talk about, how do we support these women with the grief that they feel for the rest of their lives? How do we love on them? How do we educate the rest of the population? Then we can talk about policy, because I think there are restrictions that we need to talk about in the government landscape. But we need to change hearts and minds first.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. What about you, Ryan?
Maybe I'm just not as good a person as you guys, but in this case, this guy just seems like cartoonishly evil. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not sure, I know it's not Christian to assume that there's nothing that you can redeem or salvage in someone, but with someone like this, I do wonder if the appropriate response is to treat him as an example. Like, this is... we're not trying to reach out to him. We're trying to reach out to anyone who doesn't have an opinion on abortion. Like, look at this cartoonishly evil buffoon, putting this instrument, like Andrew described in graphic detail, that, dismembers babies and putting that on top of your Christmas tree and, celebrating it. Like, I just don't know if there's anything that you can redeem, save, salvage by trying to reach out to people like that. Maybe it is... maybe the important thing is to reach out to the people who don't have an opinion on abortion. That's maybe, and again, like I said, it doesn't sound very Christian, but using this idiot as an example, as this, this is not humane. That's not a great response to your question, but it is kind of like, man, there are some people I just don't know if it's even worth trying to reach across the aisle to.
I think the point is it's always worth, everyone is, even the most lost people are still reachable. I think God can change anyone's heart.
I think there's a mixture there. I think absolutely, unquestionably, what you're saying, Joe. I mean, I think that this, any person can be convinced, any person can be reasoned, and at the end of the day, any person can be saved from kind of the nonsense that's in their heart. But at the end of the day, I do agree with you, Brian. I think that there are certain times where it is functional to also, to put something on a pedestal and say, hey, this is unacceptable.
Right.
Maybe that person needs shame and the other people in the middle need to recognize the evil that they're kind of getting on board with. Because I do believe that there are plenty of Democrats, not in the establishment. That establishment class, like I said, safe, legal, and rare was a Trojan horse. They were using it to make a more permissive society for abortion. People in the middle, voters, just the everyday folks who are, moderate Democrats, those Joe Biden voters that we've talked about all election cycle, the more moderate Democrats, blue dogs, those folks, some of them just aren't educated enough. So sometimes maybe pointing out these people who are, this is what
they believe.
Yeah, they're more than happy to throw, white supremacists in our face and say, this is what right-wing ideology looks like drawn out to its farthest conclusion. I don't necessarily agree that that's the farthest conclusion of conservatism. I don't think that I think that's an aberration more so than, a derivation of conservatism. But I think that it is fair to say this is an extension, the furthest logical extension of progressivism right now. This is what it looks like. This is the side that you're on. Are you on the wrong side? Time to take stock.
Yeah.